Thank you for tuning in to the Men Don't Cry podcast. If you are affected by any issues we discuss in this episode, please feel free to turn off and tune into the next one. Myself and Charlie aren't trained professionals, so if you are suffering from mental health issues, please speak to your GP or a professional to seek advice or medical help. Now, without further ado, please enjoy the episode.
So welcome to the Men Don't Cry podcast with me, Charlie. And
Right, I'm Louis.
so it's the first episode.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
it is exciting. Should we start on who we are? Well, just before we start,
Yeah.
how are you, Charlie? How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm
Yeah?
good. We haven't been able to talk, have we, that much because
No.
me and Louis live together.
Get out of the way, yeah.
Yeah, get out of the way. So we live together, but I've been away for the weekend. You have as well.
So
We've both been
yeah,
home.
both been back in Kent.
Yeah, so we both come from Kent, and we go to Ravensbourne University, which is where obviously we got to know each other,
Yep.
and we live together with two of our other mates as well.
Mhm.
So the first time we ever met was we came to it wasn't an open day as such. It was like a interview preparation. So we hadn't
Yeah.
got into uni yet.
Yeah, it was just before our interviews.
Yeah, and it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So we could come
life
in.
was normal.
As normal as life can be. But yeah, definitely before the pandemic, and we came in and sort of started talking to each other, which was odd because of all the people there. We ended up sort of talking to each other a little bit. And you said that you was from an area in Kent, and I said I was from an area in Kent, which was quite cool. I thought out of all the people there, to meet someone that comes
weird
from
you were sat
my
right
area.
next to me.
Yeah, exactly. And so we met then, and then fast forward, nearly half
So
a
that
year.
was in February 2020.
Yeah.
Early February.
Yeah.
And then we next saw each other
September.
in September. Now living in West Ham.
Yeah.
So really close to uni. Lovely place. Big up where we live.
Yeah.
And now
and well, just to put it in is the actual origin of the podcast and why we started to do this. Obviously,
Yeah, that's important.
That was an absolute load of rubbish what we've just talked about. But what it led to is basically me and Louis. I don't remember the exact first time we did, but we're not very good at going to bed at a reasonable time. We sit downstairs and watch shit.
awful.
I mean, I was gonna say. I mean, I don't want people to think we're party animals because we're really not cool.
we had an hour's debate about Taylor Swift the other night.
Yeah, and we both hate her.
And we don't like her.
Yeah, so what was the point in that?
Yeah, it's just fun.
So yeah, and we started having conversations, and I think that's what brought us closer together because we started both opening up, and not the conversations weren't sad conversations, but they were certainly discussing topics.
We just sit and talk about like politics, social dilemmas, even like
you're
just
making
like
me sound too posh now.
films. Yeah, I know. Most nights it would be about Arsenal. We're both big Arsenal fans, so most nights would be about football.
Everyone's going to turn off. No.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we'd have lots of long chats about anything. It would span. It wouldn't just be one topic on the night. But we'd go to bed at like stupid o'clock, and then I think that is like you're right. That's what it's. And we sort of, as you said a while back, like we felt that this should be a podcast because we're two young lads, and I feel like we're both quite in touch with our emotions. And not that that's good because it's becoming a more common thing, but that still needs to happen a lot more. And so we think, why not share it? Like if you don't, there's going to be points where you might not agree with what we say, and that's absolutely fine. That's it's almost what we want.
Yeah.
But we just thought we might as well because it's important to talk about because we've all had our troubles, and it'd be silly to ignore them. And so doing a platform like this, which isn't like in your face very much, it's very conversational. You'll work out as we sort of go along. We are just chatting a lot of it was just coming off the dome, really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
So the first episode is about grief, if you guys didn't know. We've actively avoided talking about grief because we wanted to have it ready for you guys.
And we want it to be natural. We don't. So what we haven't planned anything. We're just going to chat. We're going to talk about. Obviously, grief is the topic of this episode. So
with that in mind,
yes,
should we crack on?
I think that'd probably be a good idea.
Probably spanned the maximum.
Overstayed our welcome on the intro.
Yeah. Leah, cut that. So,
yeah,
our own experiences of grief is something we really want to cover.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important, because the only way we can contextualise our opinions is, you only know your truth.
Yeah.
I think that's important to always stress. We can only say what we know and what we've experienced, because we can't talk on anyone else's behalf. So our experiences of grief will be massively important to this episode. So do you want to kick us off? Do you want me to start?
I think you should start.
Shall I start?
I think you should start, yeah.
I love the sound of my own voice.
So, I mean, let me ask you. So obviously we're talking about grief. And I think it'd be good to start off with talking about what your experience is with grief.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've really grieved a person, and how was that experience, and when was that as well? I think that's really important.
Yeah. So I'd count myself very lucky. I think I've messed that up though, because I'd never had a grandma really.
Yeah.
That's not really lucky. I would love to have had a grandma.
Yeah.
But my mother's side, my grandma died before even my brother was born, so years before I was born.
Right.
And then my dad's mum, my granny, she died when I was about 2. So I obviously met her. She saw my first steps.
Really?
So that's cool. On Christmas Day.
And they died of natural causes, was it?
I don't know.
But were they older?
Yeah.
That sort of
my mum's side wasn't. But anyways.
Yeah.
So I never really had a grandma. So that was something. I never grieved them though, obviously, because I didn't know them.
Well, it's not obviously, because I think you can grieve not having experiences with someone. I guess if
that's So I wish I wish I could have had a grandma. I wish I envy people with, and it's not right to, I know, but like I go, oh my god, I wish I had like just another sort of female figure, like a grandma, to sort of guide me, and even just to go to their house and like be a bit spoiled as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, all those sort of things. And like both my granddads did a brilliant job, and I really am thankful for them. But yeah, so that's my sort of first experience. My uncle died of lung cancer when I was about 7 or 8. So I didn't understand it really. I knew it from the side of watching my parents, especially my dad, because it was his brother, go through that, because that's my sort of first understanding of grief. I guess. I think
sorry to interrupt. No, I guess it's most people's, because the natural order of things, how life, not in an ideal world, but how life kind of goes, is that when you're a child, your grandparents die and you grieve, but you also watch your parents grieve their parents, and you start to learn.
Humanises them.
What that is. Definitely.
They're your parents, but then
the first time you see your parents cry is obviously a massive moment.
We've spoken about this.
We have.
And it's an experience you can't quite describe.
No, and the natural order of things should be that the first time you see them cry, and I'm not talking about a tear. I'm talking about proper crying. Is at maybe their parents' funeral, when they find out.
My parents are very protective of me. My mum.
Yeah. She's a wonderful
amazing
woman.
Oh, I couldn't ask for much better. But she and her and my dad were very protective over me and my siblings when that was happening. So like we'd go on like weekend sleepovers at all of our friends' houses when they're going up to say goodbye and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So I was quite protective from that as a child. And then you asked me, have I ever really experienced grief? And I'm not going to go chronologically here, because my granddad died when I was 17. Yeah. And we're going to come on to this later, but he was very old, and it was very sad, but we knew it was happening. Yeah. And this is like I said, it's going to be touching this later, but it made it a lot easier. So I think I grieved partially for that, of course, but I don't think I was close enough to him to really feel the extent. Yeah. But when I was 15, my first dog, Maisie, who when I was 3, we got Maisie when I was 3. So she'd been in my life as long as I can remember.
Representing your childhood, really.
Yeah. She passed away. We put her down when I was 15 or 16. And
so she'd have been 12, 13.
Yeah. So good age for a dog, but she was only a little sausage dog. She hated me. Did not like me, to the extent where at Christmas time we have advent calendars. She would sometimes, or somehow, every single year know exactly which advent calendar was mine to steal.
Brilliant.
Bad dog.
Brilliant.
But so when that very sad day came, that was my first experience of grief.
Was it unexpected?
Yeah, really unexpected. So basically, the problem with sausage dogs is that they're very fragile backs, and because they're so long, she all of a sudden one day couldn't use her back legs, just like that. And
really, just overnight.
Yeah, and we didn't know how. We still don't know how. All of a sudden, she was just. When it got to the point where she couldn't sort of function. So we made the really horrible decision because we thought we could, try and do surgery, but she was an old dog.
Yeah.
And they said it's not really guaranteed. So we thought, you know what, it's the horrible decision, but you have to make it.
And how old was you at that time?
Me?
Yeah. Did you say would you
15 or 16?
15, so I guess you're getting to the age where you can sort of understand it a bit more, but still at that age, I think you've got. Did you ever? I mean, obviously. Your parents made the decision to put her down. Did you ever question that? Did you ever?
No.
You didn't question
No,
that?
not at that time because
I guess you're old enough to understand how that works and the morality of that.
So weirdly, I was home. I was off school because I had a really bad cold or something. I really wasn't feeling well. I was off school when she got bad. Like, I was the one that sort of worked it out because I took her out to the garden and she couldn't walk.
And up until that, was she still? I mean, sausage dogs aren't fast dogs, but was she still running about?
She was active, so we just got. Dottie wasn't that old, and when we got Dottie, my other dog, who is still with us now, she really brought life back into Maisie, and that was really nice to see. So she was an active dog. It wasn't like she was at wit's end, but yeah.
It's actually so strange to see that switch off.
It was, and that's the shock factor in grief.
Yeah,
which I think is really integral to how you grieve.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're comparing two things here. You're comparing your granddad passing away, who is human, and he's someone that, big up John, and he's someone that you would have looked up to and would have spent a lot more time with, had conversations with, and then you're looking at a dog who doesn't like you, but they are.
But she was my immediate family,
and she was. But the difference I really want to look at is you didn't expect. Your dog to pass away, whereas you expected your granddad, and I guess that's something to think about in terms of grief is never easy.
Why don't we go on to but we'll come to your experiences, but why don't we come on to anticipatory because it feels like it's coming anyway.
Okay, so this
is what we want. This is another part we want to talk about. So anticipatory grief, right? So the idea that it's coming, so you can begin your grieving earlier. So. I have a friend whose dad really sadly passed away when he was quite young of dementia.
Right.
And when it came to the day, obviously he was, in bits, but.
And how old was he?
He was 17, 18.
Right.
No, 17. When it came to the day, it was like he was ready.
Right.
And it's a really strange feeling. Do you know what I mean? Because you begin to grieve. Especially with something like that sort of disease, which is horrible. You grieve when it's starting. Right. But then with anything like that, like with my granddad, it was cancer, so for a while that it's coming, unfortunately. And it's not very nice, but that so you start to say goodbye and you prepare mentally. But when something like Maisie happens and it's shock factor and all of a sudden one day she's gone, you go, oh my God, that hits you like a ton of bricks because you can't prepare for that. You can't prepare for death. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those.
You can try.
Yeah. Well, two things in life are certain: death and taxes. So you can't stop it. But with anticipatory grief, it's really interesting because you can go, well, I know this is going to happen, so I can put myself in the absolute best position I can to get ready for it. But it can also go the other way, and it can be as bad then, it can continue and be as bad, but because you're still, they're still there. But it's really interesting. I think that's such a interesting bit of the human psyche. Like almost, you see people like, we consider this my granddad, like celebrating, having him being present at his own funeral. And that's a thing that's becoming more popular.
Yes. Well, it was in the book and film, The Fault in Our Stars. I remember watching that. my
Not
first
seen
ever, it's not that good, but my first ever, my first ever experience
Don't worry about this, son.
of watching. I didn't read the book, but I watched the film.
Yeah.
Obviously, I study films, so I love films, and I remember watching that at cinema. And the film's a bit rubbish, but there's a really, really good scene where the main lad in the film, he is dying, and he definitely will die. He is terminal, and he decides that he'd like his girlfriend and his best friend to do a funeral for him.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, it was a really, really breathtaking scene, and I would imagine, as you say, it probably is becoming more popular because, I mean,
you have to celebrate,
but also in a way. And in the nicest way, and in the best way possible, it's a little bit selfish because you think of, when you think of death and when you think of dying, you think about who's going to say what at your funeral and who are the people that are going to go up and tell the funny stories and what stories are they going to tell.
I'm 20, I've thought about it.
Yeah, I think we all have that.
Yeah.
I think it's a dream or just before you go to bed you have them weird thoughts, and I think it's one of them ones. So
on the topic of funerals, I think like everyone has a vision of a funeral and everyone has like, it's almost like, well, when I die, I want to be in control of how my funeral is, not someone. So like, say, hypothetically, I am an old man and I've got no immediate family, no one, and I've got one distant person, but it falls to them how my service is. What do they know about me? So I think having your own funeral and being present and being like, no, I want this on my, I want Let It Be playing. Like I want to control it, and it's very human to control. And there's two massive events in your life: the day you get married or whatever, and the day you die. The day you're born, the day you die.
Yeah.
You want to be in control of at least one of them.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, think about it really. What a weird concept that the day that everyone comes together and celebrates you and is amazingly kind to you, you're dead. Yeah. Why is that a thing? Well, I mean, obviously you have your birthdays and everyone comes together and buys you a present and your family start arguing and your auntie has too much wine and all that stuff, and their little moments. But the day that everyone comes together and celebrates and everyone gets emotional and everyone tells great stories and then you go off and have a party and all that sort of stuff, you're not there.
You're missing the best party of your life.
Yeah, and what a weird. I mean, I guess it's just tradition.
It's just how it is. So I think having that celebration, because I think it's important we talk about celebrating in death. Do you know what I mean? Like, we'll come on to your dad, but you tell me things about him all the time. And I would have loved to have met him. Do you know what I mean? The way you talk about him, and I know you said this, like, my God, I would give a lot just to meet him. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
So to celebrate that person's life is so essential, and I think it's not done enough. Yeah, I think maybe as we sort of progress, people might begin to be present in their own funerals, or maybe it's not a funeral because you still have that, but like have a celebration with everyone together and be like, look guys, I'm popping my clogs pretty soon. Yeah. Like, unless it's accidental or you don't know what's going to happen, you might be a freak death, you might get hit by a train, but at the same time, it'd be able to be like, oh, well, I really appreciate you all. Yeah. And thanks for being in my life.
Well, look, I've got something to say on this really. I mean, just throw a little bit of advice out there. Whatever you're going to say about someone at their funeral, make sure you've said it to them before they die.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Because I've been to 3 funerals in my life, and at all 3 of them, when people go up and they say they're amazing, they've written a poem, or they have to try and summarise their relationship in about 100 words. It's absolutely beautiful. I can guarantee that none of them, and it's there's nothing wrong with that. It's very human, but they only feel comfortable enough to say these things after someone's passed away. Well, don't. Like, go if it's your grandma, and you know that she's not even know that she's going to pass away soon. Just in general, pop round and just say it. And I know some people might not want to go up to their grandma and do a massive speech, but just let her know let her know how you feel. I mean, I think that's really important to do.
I am expecting a big speech from you tomorrow morning.
I'll be dead before you, mate. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Place your bets.
Yeah. Okay.
So, should we go on to you?
If we have to.
Go on then, bloody hell. What are you like? So you asked me about my experience of grief and the stages of my experience of grief, which is something that we don't usually ask. What's the stage of your grief? But like, what was your first experience of grief? Okay. And this is sort of like, because I obviously am aware, but like, do you think it prepared you?
Okay. So basically, when I was about 11 or 12, an incident occurred, and it was the first time that I was aware that my dad might have some mental health issues. To give context, in my childhood, I mean, I've told you this before, and I think everyone says it, or most people do, and that's lovely, but I really truly believe that he couldn't have been a better dad. So he worked 5 days a week in a print, like he worked in print, estimating print. So if you've ever seen The Office, that job, you know the accountant, you know Big Keith, that job. So he did that 5 days a week, and then on the weekend he'd spend inviting all the cousins round, or doing a barbecue, or taking us to rugby, coming to watch us, you know, taking us down to shops, all this sort of stuff. He was I think he took a lot of credit for a lot of the fun stuff away from my mum, bless her. But you know, he was that, and that's certainly how I remember him. And then when I was about 12, I mean, he had a terrible time. He got made redundant. His best friend passed away, unfortunately, way too early. You know, and I think he just had a really terrible time. But I wouldn't say that was the start of his mental health issues. Actually, I think he had mental health issues when he was younger, and because of the age that he was brought up.
A lot of it starts when you're.
Yeah, it is, and we're in a time now where it's fantastic that we're so mental health awareness.
Not
I mean,
nip it in the bud, but like, do you know what I mean? Prevention is so important.
Yeah, and spotting things early and being able to talk about that. And at the time that he was growing up, you know, especially being a teenager in the early 90s and coming into the late 90s, being a young man, there's a lot of pressures on that. And at no point really did he probably think, maybe I should go to a doctor and talk about my head and how I'm feeling, because it wasn't really a thing. It just didn't happen. And we don't know, but from what he told me, it wasn't really a thing, and from what I know, it wasn't really a thing, and it wasn't as well known as it is now. And so, unfortunately, he probably had a few issues from when he was younger. I think a lot of it was anxiety. He wanted to be the centre of the party, the life of the party. He was, to be fair, but I think that put a lot of stress on him. He wanted to be the most popular guy, and you know, whatever that took. To make everyone laugh, to tell stories. They might have been a little bit embellished, but I think I take that from him probably as well. And so going back to that, so when I was 12, there was an incident, unfortunately, and he had a little bit of a breakdown, and it was the first time my mum mentioned that, you know, I didn't know what mental health was, so it was, you know, it was quite a shock to learn that he might have some issues, and we were talking about earlier about when your parents become humans. It's a big moment in your life. I think sometimes, you know, sometimes it can happen when you're 30, when you're 40, you know, but for a lot of people, it happens when in their formative years, in their teenage years. And for me, it happened when I was coming into teenagehood and coming out of my childhood. I started to realise, oh, my mum's crying, oh, my nan's crying, oh, my dad's crying. Like that's especially when you've got a dad who's quite masculine.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, sort of the gender stereotypes within parenting are becoming more merged, and I think that's brilliant. Yeah. But I think as a boy growing up, your dad's everything. Yeah. Your dad. For me, I very lucky. I had a dad and a brilliant big brother, and they were everything to me in those sort of senses, because all I wanted to do was be like them. And so when you see someone like cry, especially as a guy, like, and even though it was only, say 15 years ago, like, a lot's happened in 15 years in like socially, so yeah. I think seeing your dad cry or seeing your brother cry is something that takes it out of you a little bit as a kid. Yeah,
I think it's huge.
You remember it. I can remember the first time. Yeah, you told me you can. So.
Yeah, and I feel like your family, when you're a kid and when you're a teenager, is a shield. It protects you. It's a bubble.
Of course.
And if you see a weakness in that, you start to feel vulnerable. And at that age as well, you're not I mean, when it happened, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about anyone else. Thinking about me. How's this going to affect me? How do I feel? And I felt as though the bubble had been burst, and I'm exposed now. And for years on with that, we put it down to anxiety, and every so often you have a little outburst. And unfortunately, as the years progressed, the breakdowns become worse, and he started doing things to cry out for help. And it wasn't often, but you know, I mean, day to day, my dad was a very, very stressed man. He was very stressed at work, and it became to the point where he got stressed just talking.
Yeah.
Because it was hard to communicate with people, especially when there's been breakdowns where he might have said something that's upset us and that have been traumatic for us.
Yeah.
When you feel like the villain, you can never go back to feeling like the hero, the dad hero. You don't get that role back.
The illusion's shattered.
It's completely gone. But saying that, he tried his hardest, bless him, most of the time. But when he started having these breakdowns, it started getting worse, and unfortunately, it started leading down quite a scary route. And 3 or 4 times, it got to the point where he nearly died, and it was very scary. And he'd have his breakdowns, and he'd go into the medicine cabinet and take some pills.
Yeah.
Your sleeping tablets, your painkillers, whatever, and then usually, I mean, he would never ever do it sober. Never do it sober. It was usually when he'd had a few drinks and he started to feel guilty, and then he just couldn't handle that guilt.
Yeah.
He couldn't handle
Takes
that.
over.
And so he'd take a few pills, and you would have to call the ambulance. And I got to say as well, I mean, I know this is probably really off topic, but every single time the police came around, because the police had to be called, they were absolutely amazing. I think in domestic situations like that, they were always great. They always was talking to my mum, trying to calm her down. I mean, I've got to say as well, just a shout out to my mum. Shout out, mum. She's absolutely incredible. In them situations, there was a situation one time where I was having a really, really severe panic attack. I can't even remember it.
Yeah.
But I remember coming back home and realising that he was having one of these breakdowns again. I could handle it. And my older brother, is the man of the house now and has always tried to be, and he was dealing with the situation. My younger brother hidden away in his room. My older brother, by the way, is 2 years older than me, so he's 21, and my younger brother is 9. So at the time, 18 and 6 probably, or something like that.
Yeah.
I was sort of left in the middle with my mum, and I remember having an absolute panic attack and a meltdown, and I didn't know what was going on. And she's a nurse. She works in a children's hospice. Talk about hard jobs. I mean, she works with kids that are going to die every single day, and she was able to just calm me down and be there for me. So absolute shout out to my mum. I don't want to neglect her point in the story.
I know we're getting to, of course.
Yeah.
And I think I'll let you get to that. Do you think you began grieving early? Well, did you know, sort of thing?
So there's a really poignant moment I think I'll talk about in a minute. So going on from that, I think it got to the point where my mum was left with 2 options. Option 1 is, by the way, by this point, and this would, I'll try and put it into, so let's go 2019. By 2019, he had been severe anxiety, severe depression for God knows, 8 years by this point. It started to become a daily thing, and not just a daily breakdown, because it wasn't. It was more of when he came home, you didn't know who you were getting.
Of course, yeah.
So you could be getting. By the way, I'll preface as well. Never ever was violent towards me, my mum, or my 2 brothers. Just want to put that out there, and I wouldn't lie about it, but he wasn't. So it would get to the point where he'd come home, we didn't know who we was getting.
Yeah.
We could have stressed dad, we could have over the top dad, so really happy or really sad. And at first we thought maybe it was bipolar, but after doing a little bit more research, we realised that bipolar was more of either a weekly or a monthly rise and fall. So over the course of a few months be really high, over the course of a few months really low. This was about changing 10 to 20 times a day.
Yeah, manic.
Very manic.
Yeah.
And so by this point, my mum had 2 options. It was either stay or go.
Yeah.
And the way she described it is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. She described it as a metaphor. You're on a sinking ship, and she's got me and my 2 brothers on her shoulders, and she's holding the hand of my dad, but the ship is sinking and he's going under.
Yeah.
And she can't drag him up. So she either tries to, and we all go down with him, or she takes us and she hopes that he can fend for himself and that he can do it himself. And it's an absolutely beautiful metaphor. Beautiful metaphor. And that was exactly what it was. At the time I didn't see that, but it's exactly what it was. And so my mum and dad, they decided to separate. My dad moved out. And at the time I was having counselling, this is what you talked about earlier, at the time I was having counselling while this was going on, It was obviously a lot for me. I had a lot going on in my personal life. I think it's important to mention that. I was having some issues with my girlfriend. It was coming up to the time I would have been taking my A-levels in a few months.
Yeah.
And
that's stressful for any teenager.
Oh, it's so stressful. It's so stressful. I mean, you know, just that alone is very, very stressful.
Times in your life.
It is. And with all this other stuff going on top, I think it was so overwhelming for me. And this is now, we're moving into the beginning of 2020. This is still before the pandemic. Just want to put that out there. So this would have been in about January, February that they decided to separate. I think it was February. And so through that time I was having counselling at school because I started to really struggle going into school. I think I've never ever been diagnosed with depression, but it got to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed. And there would be days where I'd have to be dragged out of bed, but I didn't go to school. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone. I was in a real rut. Yeah. So I started getting counselling and big up my secondary school for getting me that because it was really, really important for me. And she was a really lovely woman, my counsellor. And the point I'm trying to make is that we started having a discussion and I said to her, I know my dad's going to die and I know how he's going to die. I know that he's going to end his own life. Yeah. And she, with all the best intentions, said, you don't know that and you can't say that's a fact when it's not.
To say that, isn't it?
Well, but it's true. Yeah, you can't say it's a fact.
Yeah,
but I knew it. Yeah. And so when my dad was, so he moved out, and I won't talk through the details of the night, but because my family will be listening to this and that sort of thing. But to cut a long story short, me and my brother, all of us had gone down to see him and to check out the place and all that sort of stuff. And it was an absolute dump, but he loved it, and we took the mick out of him for it. Yeah. It was just brilliant. It was so funny. And we went down, we had a laugh, and just said, see you later, got in the car, and 2 days later, he wasn't answering his phone and that sort of thing. So we started to think maybe he's had a breakdown, or maybe he's just run away, that sort of thing. And I think in my head
people don't answer the phone all the time, so you can't have been,
Exactly, and I was thinking worst case scenario, and then unfortunately, fortunately for me, I didn't go down, but my mum and my brother did. Yeah. They weren't answering their phones, so I was getting a little bit worried. And my auntie came round, and she made sure, she just said that she was coming around to help me babysit because I was looking after my little brother. So he's gone upstairs, and she just takes me. I thought it was a bit weird she was coming round, but I thought, whatever. She sat me down on the sofa, and she's an amazing woman as well, because she kept this persona up that everything was fine. Yeah. And all the time she knew that my dad had died. Yeah. And that she was going to have to tell me. So she kept up this persona and this strong front. And then she sat me down the front room and she said, Charlie, your dad's died. Yeah. And I said, what? Yeah. And I think I laughed. I think I laughed out loud. I just went, what? What are you talking about? Yeah. And then when she said he's killed himself, that's when I knew. Yeah. If she'd have gone, he's been run over by a car, I'd have gone, no, you're talking rubbish. As soon as she said that, I knew. And it was a horrible, horrible experience. And I could talk about the experience of that night and how upset I was. It's exactly as you would imagine. Yeah. I don't need to talk about it. No. But one thing I'd really like to talk about, which brings him into it, because I love to bring him into it.
Of course, he's always in the room with us.
We, on his 45th birthday, so my dad died when he was 45. 46. I'm going to get this wrong. Sorry. It was his... it would have been his final birthday. Yeah. So this was in May, the year before he passed away, which was in the next year, April. Yeah. So he was having a bonfire. He loved a bonfire, barbecue, anything like that. He loved to be outside, always in his shorts, outside, lapping up as much sun as he could get. Of course. And we went out and he had a bonfire for his birthday. Yeah. Brilliant. What a dad thing. To have a fire.
Get the barbecue going.
Bit of meat on the barbecue and a fire.
Couple of beers, get the boys round.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely. You can't get better than that. Anyway, I went down because he was sitting down there by himself. I sat down and went, you all right, Dad? And he said, yeah, I'm fine. I looked at him and I thought, you're not. I said, what's the matter? He said, no, nothing. I said, no, go on, tell me. And this is really, really, really poignant, I think. He said, it's just so weird. He said, I never thought I'd make it to 45. And at that moment, I thought, God, the amount of people that's probably got to 100 and gone, wow, can't believe I got to 100. Or, God, I'll never make it to 90. I'll never make it to 70. Yeah. I'll never make it to 50. Yeah. I'll never make it to 45 on his 45th birthday. I think at that moment, it was in my head that I don't know if he's going to have another one.
Yeah.
And that's such a, and so, that goes on to anticipating.
Yeah.
Because did I think in the back of my head that it was a possibility? Yes.
Yeah.
Was that important for me to think that? Definitely important, because you need to accept the fact that it's a possibility.
And so for you, when did the grieving begin? Did you begin to grieve?
Do you know what? It's an impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
And that sort of ruins the whole point of our podcast. But no one knows what grief is, because
everyone's different.
Grief is a concept. It's a word that is there to summarise something that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And what is grief? Well, grief is it feeling sad? Not necessarily. It's so hard to summarise. But I think for me, if you're asking when it started, the obvious point to say was that night. But I don't think that's true.
No.
Because is grieving? I mean, we're going to talk about this. The 5 steps.
Well, I was about to say,
we can. If you want to go through that, maybe we can talk about that, and I can answer any questions on that as well.
Yeah. So we've obviously there's the famous. There's probably some people say 7 or 8. I'd say 5. That's the one I've always known. So it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance.
Right.
So I think denial, like it's funny because I've not shown you this, and you know it also, but like denial, you initially went, what do you mean? What do you mean? Do you know what I mean?
That stage lasted for about 3 seconds. But I'm sure that's probably the same for most people.
Yeah, it's a short one, of course, because you're going, what do you? No, of course they're not. And it's that sort of thing like, oh well, I'm going to see them again. Of course I am. It's my granddad. It's my dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? And then we come on to anger. I've personally never felt angry with grief. I don't know if you have.
I have.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. I think that's one that it's an odd one. I think most people would assume that when someone, I hear this a lot, when someone passes away through suicide, they go, it's okay to be angry at them. I was never angry at him. He lasted 9 years being the most stressed, depressed man that I knew. He went 9 years, probably 8 years too much for us. I can never be angry. He tried his hardest to keep on going, and he did, and it was absolutely amazing that he did that. Especially for my little brother, really amazing. He got loads of years with my dad that probably, if my little brother hadn't been born, maybe he wouldn't have even lasted that long. I think he really kept going for him. But my anger wasn't directed towards my dad. My anger was directed towards the people around me
that weren't there.
Well, it's not even that, because it's hard for a lot of people, especially of an older generation, to understand what's going on in terms of someone's mental health.
And also, you have the whole a measure of keeping up appearances, and
of course,
you don't. A lot of people are very proud, and it's hard to say I need help.
Yeah.
And so it then creates a barrier to them.
Well, it wasn't something we advertised.
No,
let's just say that, because of course he didn't want everyone looking at him.
And your family deserve that.
Yeah,
that sense
exactly.
of pride.
But I think after he passed, I got so many messages from people that never gave me the time of day.
Yeah.
And I think, are you messaging me because you want to feel good about it? That you've done something good, that you've been nice? Because, and some of them might even watch this. And the whole time when I was getting messages, I never once got angry. And about a week later, I just felt enraged.
Yeah.
Whether that's, the saying about grief is that there's no right or wrong feeling. So, there's no right or wrong feeling, but everything you feel is okay and right.
Yeah, of course. It's a
You're justified in feeling everything you're feeling.
Grief is a process. It's not just a feeling. It's a whole variety of feelings, as we know. There's lots of stages.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And so I just had this overwhelming sense of anger.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to every single one of their houses and just hit them.
Yeah, well.
I was so angry at the arrogance to message me when you'd never given me the time of day before. And one of the first things you say to me in months is, I'm absolutely devastated that your dad's died. You're not. No. It's okay. You're not. You didn't know.
It's a social side of it. You have. It's almost like you might do something wrong, and so it's like, I'm so sorry. For what? What have you done? You've done nothing wrong. Why are you apologising to me? But you have to say it.
Yeah.
So you can almost understand them for it. I can also equally, I can get that. Of course, you're going to be angry because it's like, it's a bit too little, too late. Yeah. Why are you apologising to me?
Another interesting point on that as well is that I felt a sense of, every single time I opened one, I replied a really nice message with like love hearts and thank you so much. Looking back on it, I don't have to be grateful.
No, it should be. It should be expected to have.
But not even. I didn't expect messages. If
No,
only,
that's
if
not what I
only,
mean.
Sorry, go on.
I mean, like, they should have been there, and they should have been supporting you. So that support should have come beforehand, not when it's too late.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
And an interesting point and a unique point to give perspective as well. My dad died on April the 8th, or the 7th or the 8th, and the lockdown had already happened. The pandemic was already rife. We weren't allowed to meet anyone. It was complete lockdown. The first one, complete lockdown. School's done. Everyone, no one's at work. Shops are barely open. You know, you have to queue up and all this sort of stuff, right? So no one, not one of my friends could come around and give me a hug.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Not one. My family all came around. We broke the rules because extreme circumstances. And my brother's friends, God bless them, they're an absolute amazing bunch of lads. If you're watching, big up you guys. You're fantastic, and they're a second family to me, 100%. They're amazing. And they all came round, and we went off for a walk, and they was great. The day after we found out, and that was amazing. But none of my my immediate group of mates were fantastic because they some of them messaged me quite often, and some of them didn't, and that's fine. You know, a lot of them aren't emotional guys, but they all clubbed together and brought loads of stuff round, and that was lovely, and left it at the front door.
It's different ways to show. Do you know what I mean?
I appreciated that. It wasn't what they were bringing around; it was the effort they were going to, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you know, as I was saying, that there was just people messaging me, and I just thought the last thing you said to me was probably like, "Shut up, Towner." You know what I mean? Like, or like, we've never even been mates, and that really frustrated me. And I think that's a lot of anger came from that.
I think that's a lot of people's anger with grief.
Yeah.
And you can have anger at the person, and I think when we talk about suicide, that is quite common.
Yeah.
To be angry at them because they've passed their. Some people say they've passed their pain on. They've not solved their pain. They've just moved it to someone else. Right. But I don't know about that because it's a whole battle, and you can't really know unless you're inside.
Well, that's a massive long debate, isn't it?
Well, maybe that'll be another episode. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of anger is common. But I think the next stage.
Well, just before we move on to the next stage, I just have one more thing to say. Not only was that part really, really hard, and it was really hard to feel that anger. Yeah. Even now, to this day, I still harbour anger towards people, and you'd be surprised at how close these people are to you. You know, they could be family, they could be really close friends, they could be people you've known all your life. That they might have messaged you once. Yeah. And because of the pandemic was on, and that was the biggest thing in everyone's lives. They message you once, you say you're all right, and they never, ever message you ever again.
They've done their job, haven't they?
I'm a 18-year-old kid who has lost his dad to suicide, and it's horrific and it's horrible. And people that you'd call family, or people possibly even in your family, message you once, and that's it. And it really puts into perspective who are your family. Of course. And I always live by the quote that friends are the family you choose. Yeah. And I love my family. A lot of them I'm so close with. Mm-hmm. But coming up to London and meeting you guys, if only I'd have known you guys when that was happening, because it would have made it a whole lot easier. Or you and the other people we live with, and all my other friends, that would have made it a whole lot easier. Absolutely. But that was just my last point on anger as well, because I still feel it to that. Of course, it doesn't.
It's something that doesn't always go. Do you know what I mean? Something's interesting, they say, with the stages. It's almost like a chart, and it goes like that, right?
So just for audio listeners.
For audio listeners, it's like a big wave. Yeah. So you start, and then you go down and down and down. And you reach your bottom. Yeah. And then you start to come up. You start to come out of it. Yeah. Apparently, the bottom is bargaining, and I think this is a really interesting part of grief that a lot of people don't really think about. Because when you think grief, you think, oh well, denial, anger, depression, and then you sort of get over it, right? You come to terms with it. Right. Bargaining is very interesting because it's the pleading with a higher power, whether that be God, whether that be just the universe or the spirits. People have their stuff, but it's like, I would give anything, like, please give me one more moment with this person, or I'll never do anything wrong again if you give me one more chance to be with this. But you know what I mean? that's the bargaining. But the other side of that is the what if. And I think that plays a massive, massive part in grief. Because you constantly go, oh, what if I told them I loved them more? Or what if I, spent more time with them? What if I appreciated them more than I could have done? Do you know what I mean? And I think that what if is so powerful, and people don't really understand. Well, people maybe don't know enough about that, because I think that really does take control over your grief.
Yeah.
Because you go, oh, what if I could just do that one last thing with them like we always wanted to do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Then
it moves on to depression.
Right.
Depression is a massive part, and the whole it's worldly depression, isn't it? It takes over.
Yeah, of course.
And maybe that's the hardest part of grief. Maybe it's the most necessary part of grief.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
I would say, going back to bargaining, it's the one stage of grief that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I knew of the other ones.
Well,
and for me, and I can't speak for anyone else, but for me personally, that's the hardest, because the anger eventually one day will fizzle out a little bit.
Yeah.
And the first one, sorry, was
anger, denial. Anger.
So denial fizzles out very quick.
Yeah.
Anger fizzles out over time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go on to talk about the other ones, but bargaining, in both different sides of it you talked about, nights that I'll spend in my room thinking about scenarios that, if my dad was still alive, he'd come round to the house and he'd get to meet all of you guys, and he'd tell me that he's proud of me for what I'm doing.
That's the thing. That's the horrible bit about it, isn't it? It's the unknown. It's the, I can't control this. You can somehow you can control your anger. You can control parts of the other things. Like depression is tough, but you can control part of your grief.
Yeah.
This is the bit. Help. This is the bit where
there's no help.
Yeah.
There's no,
because you torture yourself with it.
You do, and not to for people out there that are going through, that are grieving and all them sort of things. I don't want to sound depressing on the subject matter, but them scenarios never stop. And I'm someone that's nearly 2 years into the process of grief, and grief is something that never ends. It's a lifelong affliction that you're with, and you'll never get over it, but you learn to live with it, I think is the quote. But bargaining, I think about scenarios every single day. Every single day.
Of course.
And what I was going to say was, I'm sitting in my room and I'm thinking about all these situations that would occur if my dad was here, and then that ends. It usually ends with him giving me a hug, telling me he's proud of me, and he drives away. Yeah. And then that thought ends, and it's almost quite nice to think about. And then you're left in the real world, and you're sitting there alone, and you're thinking, oh, this is the real life. That's not the real life.
And that's where acceptance does come into it. I know we've not massively touched depression. I think because depression...
We will be doing
Of course. And I think depression is quite highly spoken about. So I think we understand what the depression within grief would be. I think most people are aware of it. We can touch... Well, maybe when we did the depression one, which I think we might be... We couldn't maybe touch on grief, but I am aware of time, is all. But acceptance. Acceptance is very important. And you learn to accept it, and it takes time. And I think a lot of people see grief as like, oh, maybe it's a couple of weeks. Like when someone dies in your family and you get time off work, it's only a couple of weeks. It's not crazy. But grief is a long process, and these might not happen in the same order. These might... acceptance is usually the end one, of course, but it's arguably the most important, because in the most brutal terms, then it's not going to change. You have to accept the circumstances.
Yeah, no,
and
100%.
And I think, well, those are the 5 stages.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on the last one, acceptance. I'm talking now directly to people that... shall I look at the camera? It's more dramatic. I'll look at the camera. I'm talking directly now to the people that have... all good? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So I'm talking now directly to the people that are going through grief right now, like directly to you guys. don't be worried about how quickly you go through these stages, and also you may never ever reach the final stage. If acceptance
that is really important.
It is really important because there's no pressure, there's no time limit.
No.
You at some point the world is going to carry on moving, and people are going to carry on going, and you might be stuck standing still. But it's so important to know that grief doesn't have an ending. It only has moments where you start to feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah.
You have big key moments. And so if you are grieving right now, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit later, but regardless of who you're grieving and what you're grieving, if you're grieving a relationship, if you're grieving a grandparent, a pet, mum, dad, brother, sister, best friend, partner, whatever, whoever you're grieving, just know that you may never ever be able to accept that it's happened, or accept that.
Don't force yourself to do it.
No, don't at all. But don't worry about that, because I haven't accepted it, and I don't think I'll ever be able to fully accept it. But what you learn to do is you learn to live with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to, you know, it's don't let grief be something that kills you, and not kills you, you know, actually kills you, but kills your life.
Takes your spark away.
It takes your personality away. Grief can take your personality away.
Like
definitely.
You've spoken about labels.
Yeah.
And being labelled with, and I spoke to my mum about this as well. When her mum passed away, it was, oh, this is Nikki, her mum just passed away, and it becomes part of your personality. But back to you at home, don't let that just be you, because of course it's a massive part of your life. It has to be.
Yeah, and it will be forever.
Yeah, but don't, you know, not let that define you. That's maybe not what I mean, but
well, no, it's true though.
Yeah.
Don't you know? And it's not. Usually it will be other people, unfortunately, and not out of meanness and yeah, them being mean, but sometimes other people will define you by it, and that's okay for them to do that. But don't define yourself by it.
Yeah, and don't hold on to it, because it's something that you can't control, and so you will somewhere or another. Like, these 5 stages are there for a reason. Like, it's common. It's found in people. So the more you try and hold on to, say, one bit of it, you want to stay angry. I know that's the intent, like, that you can't really control how you're feeling, but sooner or later, like we've said, acceptance is going to come into it. Definitely. And you have to, maybe acceptance runs through all of those phases. It maybe runs through each bit, and you accept that you're not in denial anymore, then you accept the anger, then you accept, and that way you can grieve. Because this is grieving as a whole. It's 5 stages, but it's a whole. So, yeah. I
mean, this is only, you know, just to say as well, the 5 stages of grief, as you've already said, it's very fluid, and it's a construct that helps us understand grief. But as I said earlier, we have absolutely no idea what grief is.
Yeah.
And we're not specialists on this subject at all. But as someone that's still going through it, and will be going through it for the rest of my life, it's not something that is easy to explain in 5 steps. But we've talked about it in 5 steps because it's a good structure to talk about.
I'll shoot down the barrel to this one. Right.
Okay.
So back to you guys at home. If you are listening in and your experiences, as Charlie has said, talk to people, because keeping it to yourself is not you're gonna only bring yourself more of a hurdle. Do you know what I mean? Each one's gonna feel bigger if you can't tell people about it, and do it in your own way. There are so many different ways of doing it. There's support groups of people in similar situations to yourself. There are, you know, ways of coping with your family, your friends, everything. But now I think we've covered the 5 stages.
Yeah.
I think we'll go for a very, very quick break. Just recap yourself, and then we'll go on to the Q&A, because we've had some questions from the lovely viewers.
Perfect.
Sound good?
Brilliant. Yeah, sounds
lovely.
Good. Right, we'll see you soon. Okay, right, it's getting late.
It is getting late. Welcome back. We've just had our quick break, and in that break, we were talking about humour in grief, and like,
what a weird topic.
I know. It's proper freaks we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird. If you, can I just say, if you find, so we're not going to be trivialising grief or death. If you find any sort of comedy in death, please just skip.
If you find that offensive, sorry.
If you find it offensive,
if you don't like that,
or anything like that, just please just skip to the end of the story.
Because this is something personal to us, and as we say, that we always have to lead with personal experiences. Mm-hmm. That's important to us. There was this time, we had just moved into our new house, and in my opinion, just to sort of preface this, humour's so important in grief, because maybe that comes in the acceptance part. humour's essential because you have to look back and celebrate their lives, and they weren't perfect, were they? Like, you know, just because they're dead doesn't make them an angel in the sense of like they were perfect, and they never did anything wrong. So I think when like stupid stuff happens, you have to recognise it. But this story isn't really something stupid, but we've touched on my pet dying, but your dog sadly died.
It did.
Right.
Oh, we're smiling.
Right.
It's not funny. No. Right, it's not funny.
Right, okay, no, it's not
the
funny.
Story will
it's not funny.
why we're smiling.
So my lovely mother dropped me off to uni for the new house, and we were all in the front. I was the last one in the kitchen, and we were all there. And my mum is just the kindest soul. She wants everyone to feel comfortable. That's all she was doing, and she was making very polite conversation with you.
She was, yeah.
And so she was saying, "Oh, do you have any pets?" Well, our flatmates are Ollie and James, so you might hear us reference them. So she was like, "Oh, do you have any pets, Ollie? Do you have any pets, James?" And they were telling us about it. She went, "Oh, Charlie, do you have any pets?" And we are big fans of Ricky Gervais. You'll probably hear us talk about him quite a lot. I'm surprised we haven't brought him up already, but his character David Brent is one of our favourite things, and a lot of our comedy is based off of him, as lots of people our age is. And Charlie's initial response to my very innocent mum was like, "Yeah, I did have a dog, jumped out the window and killed itself." That was it. Deadpan silence. My mum, so Charlie said that straight-faced. My mum's gone, oh right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
As every human would. Me, being an awful person.
Yeah, not just you.
No, and several others in the room. I turned around in the moment and just started violently shaking because how funny I found it that you put my mum in that position unknowingly, but it was so funny.
You know what? It's just the way I talk about things sometimes.
Yeah. But that's why I love you, Charlie, because the way you say things and your reactions to things are brilliant. And in that moment,
yeah.
He couldn't have put it any more perfectly. Well, my dog jumped out the window and killed itself. And that's the story, if you had to write it down in one sentence. But my mum had no way of coping with that because she'd only met you once before.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I did at the end just preface that it didn't actually die then. It fucked its back legs up. And then,
by the way, Nicola.
By the way, I absolutely love my dog and actually really miss her. So but we're trying to laugh about it.
Yeah, you got to.
You have.
That's
so
important.
He jumped out the window, fucked his legs up, and a couple months later, he had to put it down. And I think that didn't really help. But and we've just been talking about this story because it's just
it comes up a lot. Surprisingly,
it's great. But it just shows that, like, no matter how sad a situation is,
there's always humour, isn't there?
There's always humour to be found.
You've got to find it. I think that was just another thing we wanted to mention because we talked about all, like, maybe the sadder stuff, but celebrating and laughing. And
telling funny stories about people that have died.
Exactly. They're not
sad stories. Just tell the best funny stories and keep them alive and keep their humour in there as well.
Yeah. Well, now we've got a Q&A section.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah.
So I put out on Instagram. We will have a Men Don't Cry Instagram very, very shortly.
Yeah, it will be linked below.
It will be. By the time this episode comes out, it will be fully fledged and looking lovely. But I put that on my Instagram. I put the question of, do you have any questions for the pod about grief? Mm-hmm. Anything. Left it very open.
Yep.
I got some crackers back, to be fair. So question 1, which I think is a brilliant question, is can you compare grief? And though the examples were sort of like, my dog died. And that was the biggest grief I've sort of felt. You've lost your parent, one of your parents, so that grief's so different, but is it? And should it be treated the same? And should you expect to feel the same?
Okay, so I have got a very strong opinion on this. And it's that grief and death is all relative.
Pain as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Pain goes along with it. It goes along with it. But let's say I grow up in a nuclear family, mum, dad, a straight family, brother and sister or whatever. And all my life I've grown up in a middle class environment and never had to worry about anything, never had to go through anything.
Yeah, very comfortable life.
And at the age of 16, our family dog passes away, right? I've never had a grandparent die. I've never had family die. That is the biggest pain you could feel.
Well, similar to my situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think similar.
In senses, of
but
course.
we're talking about a hypothetical perfect
Yeah.
upbringing. You've never had to feel any pain. So that loss is huge, and you can go through them stages of grief, and you might never get over it. And it can be, you can sink, and you can have a depression from it, and all that sort of stuff. And then you can have someone like me who's lost a parent, and I'd say 99% of people are going to go, well, your grief was worse. Your grief surely is stronger. But I think it's relative to what you've been through in your life.
Yeah, of course.
So I've been through hardships, and I've been through traumatic experiences. And so the death of my dad is a massive one for me. But just because someone's dog's passed away doesn't mean that they're not entitled to feel
their pain was any less.
Exactly. Their pain is exactly the same. To them, it's exactly the same, and they're hurting as much. So I think that's always really, really good to keep in mind at the back of your mind.
It's personal. Some people deal with like a death of a pet very easily.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think your experiences are valuable in this sort of when you're weighing it up, because of course, like, you know, you could have a really fractured relationship with a parent, and they could pass away and it not affect you as much. But pain is and grief is so individual, and I think we've stressed that the entire time. Like, you can't really ever say they're the same.
No, it's very hard to give advice on.
Yeah. Well, I think with that one, our advice, my advice would be, don't try and compare your grief to anybody else's, because it's not worth comparing your grief to anybody else.
Just
because
focus on your own grief.
Get yourself through it and learn and appreciate the people in your life because of the grief you feel.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Think I've answered that one?
It's a great question. By the way.
Brilliant question.
Yeah.
Question 2. This might be my favourite.
Okay.
And this is one that
I'm getting ready.
Yeah, man.
You picked this up.
Yeah. This comes from Anonymous. As a female, what is the best way we can help when a man is grieving?
Such a vast question.
What a question, by the way.
It's a fantastic
Cracker.
question. It's a fantastic question. So if we're talking specifically about, should we put it into a situation? So situational. Let's say you're in a relationship. You're a woman. You're in a relationship with a man.
Hello.
And single. And
yeah, thank you.
So let's say you're a woman. You're in a relationship with a man, and one of his parents passes away. So my girlfriend, for example, was with me. So it probably is a really daunting thing. I would say, first of all, the best thing you can do is listen.
Yeah. Sounds so obvious, do you know what I mean?
It's so obvious.
But
I felt as though people felt like they felt like they wanted to give me advice, or that they had to give me advice. And one thing my girlfriend's absolutely fantastic at is that there's not always a right thing to say, and there's not always wisdom or advice to be given. You know, we don't live in a film. There's not that wise old person to sort of, you know, give us advice and tell us exactly what we need to hear and that sort of thing. And you know, I think it's really important that you make sure that you listen, because for a guy, I think sometimes we just ramble, we just talk rubbish.
As you have just experienced for the last hour and a half. Thanks very much for staying.
You know, we ramble on and we just want to express our emotions sometimes. And I'm saying this, by the way, I'm saying this very broadly. You'll know if it's your boyfriend or your dad or your brother or whatever, you'll know them, obviously. Everyone's individual, and not every guy is the same. A lot of guys are way more emotional, and some of us don't like to talk about it as much and all that sort of stuff. But I would say the first thing to do is make sure that you're listening.
On a human level, just listen.
Yeah, just
let
listen
them express themselves.
and not feel as though you have to advise.
Yeah.
Secondary, and this is a personal one, and this might not be the same for everyone, but sometimes, you know, I felt as though when I was I was venting and ranting and talking about my experience when it was happening, people would jump in and go, oh, that's really sad, when I was younger, and start talking about and it's all with great intentions. It's all trying to relate, and I do it all the time.
We do it to each other.
We do it.
We've talked about this before.
Really annoying.
It's humans, isn't it?
Yeah, but don't feel bad if you catch yourself doing that once in a while. But really, I think as a man, I want to be heard. And I don't necessarily all the time want to hear what your story is, because at the moment I want to feel like I'm being heard and that I'm important.
Well, I think this question is obviously targeted at a female trying to understand the male version of it, and I think it is on a human level. In that instance, sometimes it's just nice to have a rant. It's nice to just get it all out, whether you're a man, woman, whatever, whatever you identify as. It doesn't really matter in that moment in your grief. Sometimes you just need to get it off your chest. You need to go through the motions, and to have someone just to be like, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I'm not making it about me. It sounds so obvious. Just listen. And I think sometimes materialistic caring is sort of frowned upon, but I think it has its place.
So what do you mean by materialistic?
So maybe not, because I know it does have its bad parts, because obviously like not actually helping someone through something, just like buying them something.
So,
but
like gestures.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. So maybe I haven't phrased that right, but taking someone out. Let's take your mind off it, or let's go do something fun, or I'm gonna buy you a coffee or a hot chocolate. Let me treat you, and it can be as simple as that. But like, often men have a weird pride with being bought things and being shown affection and that sort of thing.
I do.
Yeah,
100%.
we've spoken about this, and my God, wait for masculinity episode 2 or 3. It's gonna bark off. It's so interesting. We've got so much to say, so I won't really go into it. But it's just little gestures from either side, and maybe this isn't really gender specific.
Yeah, got it in the end.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wouldn't think I'm doing a podcast, but I think, like you say, just listening and giving guys a space to express themselves freely.
And also just to round that off, some guys don't want to open up. They don't want to be really emotional. They don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. Make sure
everyone's individual. You'll know.
Yeah, and I think we're the whole name of our podcast, Men Don't Cry. It's ironic, isn't it? It's like basically we're saying that statement's rubbish. It's a stupid statement. It's all right to cry, but if let's say for me example, if I don't want to talk about something, and I'm not feeling comfortable enough, and it's not the right time, then that's okay. And make sure that you're not saying, oh come on, you can talk about it. No, it's fine. Come on, like just be emotional. Just open up to me. Like don't bottle things up. Sometimes we like to bottle things up, and we don't express them through words. We express them through going on a run, or like putting it into.
It's hard to explain, because I think, especially, so say like grieving loss of a relationship, for instance. I know with some of my experiences, first few months, don't worry about it. Like it's happened. Forget about it. Move on. Live my life. In that time, the girl may have been coping with it and like expressing how they're feeling, crying to their friends, or you know what I mean, like going through the motions of the grief that they're going through. And then I've delayed grief massively, pushed it, because that's just I don't know why. A lot of guys do that, and I am one of those people that does that. So. Maybe saying it's okay not to have to come and cry to me or come in, but just I think letting them go through the motions and maybe taking the pressure off them a bit.
And let them take charge. Whatever they're comfortable with.
I think we covered that.
Brilliant.
Question 3, and this is a hard one. How do I grieve someone that I didn't like? This is really interesting, in my opinion. Because it's true. Like, I think a lot of people grieve, and this is where you've come from, like with your experiences. People have come to you saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and they're acting as if they're grieving, but they may not have actually really liked someone, or you know, you might have lost a grandparent that you thought was a bit of a prick.
Yeah.
But you now still somehow have to grieve them.
Yeah.
And I don't really know if there's an answer to this.
Well, there's not. You're right. There is no answer. I guess a lot of the questions.
I think you have to see them for their good parts, right?
No.
No?
I disagree.
Okay.
I think when someone's passed away, your immediate reaction is sadness.
Yeah, of course.
And that's all right for that to be the immediate reaction, to be sadness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all individual. A lot of people like to create this beauty around someone that's died and remember only the good bits, and especially true in young people. My younger brother, for example, would never ever say a bad word about my dad, and he's only 9 years old, but it's because he isn't thinking about all the bad times.
Yeah.
He's only thinking about the good times because he wants dad to be
easier, isn't
an
it?
angel and
It's easier,
and to be perfect.
for sure.
But for someone that, you know, you weren't, either you maybe a family member that you didn't like, or someone that you sort of rarely knew, you take them for what they were, and don't feel like you have to be sad.
Yeah.
It's okay sometimes to go, well, that's sad for the people that like them. I didn't like them. But you know what? They passed away. I'm going to be respectful, and I won't say a bad word about them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, that's just morally how it should be. And if you know, I've had friends before tell me about times where they've gone to a funeral to someone they don't like.
Yeah.
Well, here would be my advice: don't go.
Mm.
And it's all right. It's not disrespectful. And this is all personal again, but I don't find it disrespectful if we invited someone to my dad's funeral, if we were able to have a proper funeral for my dad. If I invited someone they didn't arrive, that is okay, because I'd rather someone make that active decision to go. You know, if you want to be there for other people, that's fantastic, but don't go because you feel like you have to. I
think that's important.
And in terms of
It's so individual, isn't it?
It's that's what I mean.
Because I think
There is
that's
no answer to
how
this
you
question.
act, but
Someone
I might act differently.
Exactly. So I think it's important to remember, you know, it's a great question because it's stumped us, because there is no answer to it, and it's all individual, and that's obviously easy to say.
Maybe if this is clipped up, maybe put your thoughts in the comments, because and this applies to all of our podcasts. Like, you know, we want as much interaction as possible because we want to understand what you guys are thinking.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah.
So definitely, we want it.
How do you grieve someone you don't like?
Well, let's, you know, hopefully the viewers and the listeners drop something below in the comments, or send us a message if you don't want it to be public. Send us a little message, and we'll definitely read them and see if we can get back to you. But
absolutely,
really want to hear people's opinions on that one.
Yeah. And last one.
Yep.
Why do you think that men struggle to grieve more than women? And do you think they struggle to grieve more than women?
Well, again, loaded question, because I have no idea on the other side.
We can only say our experience.
We can. I would say in general, for however long humans have existed, men and women put pressure on men to be strong, the backbone of the family,
providers,
and that's not, in my opinion, healthy, but that's the way it's been for a long time. And so, you know, I think, as I've mentioned before, from my experiences of my dad's death, there were people in his life that I think probably cried when they first found out, but have never really expressed loads of emotion unless they've had a few drinks and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I think it's because, as men, and it's not necessarily women or men that put pressure on us, but it's putting pressure on ourselves to be strong and to be supportive of others. And I think it's one of the only times in a man's life where he feels that it's not at all about him. It's about the others around him and supporting people around him. I think that's natural instinct as a man to look around to see, you know, when it happened, I really wanted to make sure my little brother was all right and my mum was all right when I found out. Wasn't really to make sure that I was okay, because I knew I wasn't.
Protect.
And it is to protect. It's a natural instinct.
I think grief is, you can't escape it. Do you know what I mean? Every single human has experienced grief.
Yeah, or
will. Because you have to. You have to, because
Yeah.
it's part of life. And so
You can't avoid it.
with that comes human instinct, because it's something that's always happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've mentally created sort of ways to cope with that. And I think instincts come massively into to protect, to maybe go back to your like natural sort of roots, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like, so you want to protect, whereas, you know, someone else who might be, you know, different to you might have the complete opposite reaction.
Mm.
So I think it is, I don't know. It's very interesting, isn't it?
It's an interesting one.
think-
I think it's hard. It's very hard to answer. I mean,
Women are more open with their emotions generally.
I think generally they are, and I think like female friendships are found or are found upon them deep conversations is usually what starts.
We're
it.
quite a anomaly, really.
We are a little bit. We are a little bit, because I think for most, certainly men of an older age,
19
men of a
and
different
20,
generation. Yeah, I think, you know, it would be going down the pub, getting drunk, so that you're able to talk about it. Whereas, how lucky are we that we were born in a
Very.
time where we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And I can just come downstairs and say to you, I'm missing my dad today.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So I think, you know, that question's really hard, because we can't see the other side of it, but we can only talk from our side. And as we've said, I think it's the obvious things, really. It's that,
Well,
you know, men feel like they have to be strong for the people.
and like
around
we
them.
said, denial and pushing it away.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a common male
I
trait.
think it is, yeah.
And like you see, like people say, like, "Oh, I'm still not over my first breakup when I was 15."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And now they're in their mid-20s, and it's like, well, because you've just not dealt with it. You've not grieved that person. You've not grieved that loss.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a male instinct. And I think maybe that's why men don't grieve as efficiently as women.
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, those are the questions.
Yeah. They were good questions, yeah.
Our last little bit
Yeah.
is something you thought of.
It is.
It
This
is.
is my baby. This is my invention. I thought it'd be great for us to. To talk.
Yeah,
about
we'll
it.
quickly wrap through these.
Okay, that's fine.
Getting kicked out soon.
So basically, I thought that we could have something interactive with our audience, and it's something that we can do as well, which is going to be really interesting to see how we deal with it. So I thought of 5 different things that we can do to ensure that they're little things that don't take much effort, just throughout the day that we can. And for you guys as well to do to maybe just improve your happiness a little bit and improve your day a little bit.
Let's start off.
Okay, cool. So first thing, so these are 5 steps.
Should we say chronologically?
We'll go chronologically. Yeah.
So what we're going to do in the morning after we've got out of bed?
Okay, so first thing you do is you make your bed.
Let's make that bed.
Yeah, it's so simple. But like, think about it. How many times do you get out of bed? You know, it's a struggle to get out of bed. You go to the shower. You and then you go out and you come back and you've got to come back to a messy, shitty bed. So make sure that when you get out of bed, it's as simple as just making your pillows all nice and neat, putting the cover back on,
Shake the sheet over.
over.
Easy. That is step 1.
It's 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You know what I mean?
It's not effort. My granddad, who I was talking about earlier, he used to, every time I stayed at his house, his cottage in Cotswolds, he would make me and my brother make the bed and make sure there's no creases.
Really?
Yeah, but
good lesson. That.
Yeah, very good lesson. Because you feel better.
Yeah, it's good for you.
Number 2, I think we'll go next with let's leave the house for 10 minutes a day.
Yes.
That's so important.
Well, after the pandemic,
yeah,
I think
especially.
it's majorly important that if you've got a day, I mean, a lot of us are really busy, especially uni students and that sort of thing. Even if you've got a day where you've got nothing
and
to
you've
do.
got 6 hours Zoom.
Yeah.
Get out.
Get outside.
Get out for 10 minutes.
Even if it's in your garden, if it's walking down to the shops.
Exactly.
If it's just taking a lap of your
Go
street.
take the dogs out.
Yeah.
Go put the bins out.
It doesn't even have to be. That's great, but it doesn't even have to be anything productive.
Yeah.
Just go out, get some fresh air, and make sure that if you know, getting some sunlight for your vitamin D. And
go and listen to this podcast on a walk.
On a walk.
Do that. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3. Water.
Well, yeah. I mean, water is so essential. I am shocking. Absolutely. You'll know.
I'm pretty good.
He's great at drinking water. I'm shocking.
Yeah.
I realised the other day that I went. I think it was 4 or 5 days.
That's mental,
water.
mate. That is bad.
And
you know it's bad as well.
I was drinking, by the way, just not water.
Just a lot.
Anything other than water.
Dr. Pepper. Pepper.
It's a lot of Dr. Pepper. So make sure that you drink 2 litres of water a day.
2.
It sounds like a lot.
We'll write this out in the description.
Yeah.
It'll be a big list.
And we will let you know.
And it'll be on our Instagram, so you can follow it.
Yeah.
Wash your face. We probably should have mentioned that earlier, but wash your face every day.
You can either do that when you wake up or before you go to bed. But
preferably twice. Yeah. Even if it's once.
I think once is enough. I think you don't want to overdo it, but yeah, wash your face. It makes you feel better. If you're insecure about your spots or anything like that, wash your face.
You will feel better about yourself.
And even if nothing changes in your face, you're going to feel so much better. It's so much more clean. And when we're in the shower, do we ever really feel like I wash my hair, wash my arm?
I wash my face in the shower. That's how I got into it. I just bring my face wash into the shower,
and it has 20
and
seconds.
it's just turn around, shower gel, shampoo, face wash. Let me do that as well.
Exactly.
And it's just part of the routine now, and it's easier. Yeah. This is something we're not perfect, by the way. God, we're not perfect. We are shocking at a lot of these things.
That's why we've said these.
So we're going to be doing them with you to see how we get on. And every week we'll recap and see how we get on with them.
Yeah. But the last one is the hardest.
That's the big one. Opinion. That's the one we need to work on.
Yes.
I got my. Well, you can say it. Go on.
Okay. So this one's really hard, and don't let this put you off. It's hard.
No.
It's easier than it sounds.
Yeah.
An hour away from any sort of screens. I'd also like to possibly say audio as well.
Yeah, I say media. Any media.
Any media in general, and go and do something. Now, we're not telling you to go and exercise. Nope. We're not telling you to go and read a book, anything like that.
Anything.
But anything you want to do, even if it's cook a couple of meals for the rest of the week.
Sit and talk to your mates.
Yeah.
You can fit an hour out of any conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we have.
God, yeah, you've just heard.
Stretch this one out.
Jesus.
But yeah, just go and spend an hour doing something, even if it's not productive.
My screen time, this is what I'm going to struggle with. My screen time this week was like 9 hours.
That's disgusting.
A day.
I'm better 9 mine was 4
hours. Yeah, you went all right. Yeah. 9 hours a day. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And most of it is fucking TikTok.
Yeah.
We
love TikTok.
Twitter a lot.
We love Twitter, don't
we? We're human. I'm bad, and I listen to a lot of music. Yeah. As you have heard, and podcasts.
Rubbish music.
It's pretty good. So that's going to be my main one. I think maybe do it with a friend and say, because you know what, if you've got a friend with you, you can then do the hours pretty easily.
Yeah, just by talking to them, and make sure that not only are you letting us know how you're doing, we're going to be letting you know how we're doing on Instagram and on the podcast.
Little stories here.
Get your
and
mates involved. Send this to your mates and get them.
Even if they don't want to listen to the podcast, send it along. Let's do a challenge together.
Yeah.
Because it makes it. And it's, if you're gonna do a challenge, you can do like stupid ones, or you could like a cinnamon challenge, like stupid shit like that. But mate, 5-step challenge to making your life a little bit better.
Exactly. And this isn't specifically for men, but I would like to preface that most women already do these things.
They're pretty great. Let's be honest. Women are pretty.
They wash their
good.
face. They're not dirty like us. So
we're foul.
This isn't just for men. If you don't do these steps as well as a woman, then get involved.
Get involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I think that wraps up a really lovely first podcast, Charles.
It's been absolutely brilliant.
It has been.
It's been nice talking to you.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me too. It's my show. So.
Well, that's my show as well. So, anyways, and thank you to the listeners
and the people that are watching as well.
And on the vodcast, thank you so much. This will be a bi-weekly release.
Yeah.
If you have any other topics you really want us to cover, please let us know. We will do our best. We've got so much to talk about. We love the sound of our own voice.
We do.
I want to say a quick thank you to everybody behind the scenes.
Yeah.
This looks lovely. This has been
very nice, doesn't it?
Weeks in the making. This has been lots of dedicated people, and so just a quick thank you to all of them.
Yeah.
Shout out to producer Leah.
Shout out.
Andre, director.
Shout
Joey, out. Alex, Jack. Like this, the names are endless.
And they will be credited. So.
Of course. But yeah, I say we end it there.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.